right onto Dover Road. Continue for 1.5 miles.
Intensive care admissions, but then the next few days will probably tell us, because obviously there's a lag between being infected.
In 1/4 mile, keep right to continue towards Tons Lane, A355.
The number of people in hospital with COVID in England has risen to 9,500, just over, up 38% from a week earlier. There's a lot of different ways, aren't there, to look at numbers. What's the reality for you? I mean, we're nowhere near where we were last year, mid-January, are we?
Keep right.
We're not. I mean, the reality
reality for us is a somewhat different character to this, I think. One really important element is the fact that many of our staff are off. So many of our nursing and medical staff and managerial and others have positive tests, and although they may be relatively well, they're clearly unable to come into hospital and interact with patients. So one of our biggest challenges is that whatever the demand is on services, and that's clearly going to be substantial, particularly for the front door of the hospital, the emergency departments and the acute medics, we're going to be struggling because an already tired, really exhausted workforce after the last 21 months is further depleted by positive COVID tests due to Omicron.
Could you just talk to me a little bit about what you're not doing at the moment, as you do COVID and other matters related with this staff who, as you say, are tired and demoralised. Some of them are off.
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto the M4 slip road to London, Heathrow Airport.
We're not life-threatening, but extremely uncomfortable and have dealt with. Now, what I need for that is a nice, clean theatre, plenty of people, one of you, and a surgeon. And I've been really lucky to get that. And that was some years ago, but I'm due again. But there are hundreds of thousands, millions of people who are going to be waiting an awful long time for what they need to change the quality of their lives. That's a reality as well, isn't it, as we focus on COVID?
I think that's really important, and I've great sympathy for you, with your
my thing's tiny.
And I'm far from minimising those, but I think that there are some really time-sensitive condition. People who are presenting with cancer, who are coming to their GPs with symptoms for the first time and have a real need for urgent surgery, and because of a variety of reasons, be it lack of availability of intensive care beds or hospital beds because wards have been taken over by...
In a quarter of a mile, merge onto M4.
That's having a real direct impact on their life, and it's causing really substantial distress to the staff within the NHS who find it very difficult, not being able to provide the standard of care that we are used to being able to, dealing with urgent surgery, and distressing, the question of vaccination plays into the whole area.
Yeah, surely does. So on the front page of the Mirror, I've already talked about the words of Professor Bell, Sir John Bell. What about the front of the Daily Mail? It's been cut isolation to 5 days. They've done this in the United States because they have a similar profile of issues and problems that you have outlined for us this morning. What I think that we in this country will probably find difficulty getting our head round is that if you cut isolation to 5 days, there are people who are going to have Omicron. In other words, people who are having COVID who are going to be allowed to go to work. That really is taking a step that many people will consider too far. Where are you on that?
Again, it's not I'm ducking the question, but we don't know for sure yet. All of these things are a balance of risks, and if we're particularly within the health service, but also obviously much more broadly within the economy, if we're depleting, if we're not able to get done what we need to get done in a hospital or in a business, and it becomes clearer, and I don't think it's absolutely clear yet, but it appears to be becoming clearer that certainly if you're vaccinated, the risks of Omicron in terms of serious disease look like they're going to be less.
Wouldn't it be great if we were at or beneath the peak now? Wouldn't that just be fantastic if we follow the same model as South Africa, where it sort of took over, flourished, and is now apparently sort of disappearing, evaporating, leaving? Wouldn't that just be great if we can allow ourselves a moment just to think about that?
I think that has to be everybody's hope. If we can have a short, sharp peak, that will also dramatically reduce the burden on the health service, because one of the real challenges last winter was that it wasn't only a high level, but it was a sustained high level, so continuously accumulating sick patients within hospitals. So it would be wonderful. I guess it's a little bit difficult because of the data changes a little bit over Christmas, as I'm sure you're aware, due to the nature of its collection. But hopefully, fingers crossed, as we go into the new year, we will see that. But I'm stressed, we just don't know at the moment.
Take care, Mike. Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Professor Mike Grocott is a some 250 members or so. Hi, Sam.
Good morning.
You haven't got any Welsh members or anything. I mean, it's just Birmingham that you do, right?
It is indeed. That's correct. Or the wider West Midlands as well.
The wider does the West Midlands stretch as far as the Welsh border?
It does actually, if you count Herefordshire and Shropshire, etc.
Well, in that case, there's going to be some Welsh about on New Year's Eve because the rules are so different. They must be very frustrated. How are your members and the people that you represent feeling at this point? Praying, I suppose, for no further restrictions after New Year.
Absolutely. I think we're also praying for a more optimistic messaging. At the moment, a number of restaurants, bars, clubs, etc. are suffering with consumer confidence also being low. I think that's a significant factor that we're all facing at the moment.
I mean, that was the old stealth lockdown argument, wasn't it? When Professor Whitty came out and started talking about, prioritise your social contacts and maybe don't go out, don't go and mix with people. It was like, oh, okay, fine. Well, that's a lockdown, folks, because, what Mr. Whitty says, Professor Whitty, people hang on every word and they become full of fear and concern, rightly or wrongly. They follow and people looked after their own Christmases and their own families and themselves, didn't they?
Absolutely, and that's not just Christmas's words, that's also in people's perception of the data that they see. The rise in infections, lowers consumer confidence, and such people decide to restrict their social engagement. It's only natural that happens, but we also have to understand the impact to local businesses, in particular those in the hospitality sector.
Yeah. What is going to be the reality in the new year for people who've gone without December? Because January and February, as people change their behaviour, do their New Year's resolutions, they don't, let's be honest, they don't go out and get hammered and spend a large percentage of their disposable in your sector like they would have done in December. So what's the reality for the people that you represent?
At the moment, the hospitality sector typically uses the revenue that it generates in its last quarter, i.e. October, November and December, to survive through the first quarter, i.e. January, February and March. And the hospitality sector's revenue then tends to kick back in April. So at the moment there's a lot of nervous business owners trying to look at a number of Excel spreadsheets, I suppose, to try and ensure that they're not at the red. And at the moment that's extremely difficult for the vast majority of our members. It's very difficult even for myself, managing my restaurants. And we at the moment can't quite see a way through that unless there is some wholesale changes in respect to support mechanisms that are in place for the hospitality sector going forward.
We haven't got any furlough this time or much in the way of help or support from government. Should furlough have been back in place, or whichever scheme you were entitled to claim for last time?
I think, if I'm honest with you, this goes back to the autumn statement, and had the correct changes been made in respect to VAT and business rates, this pressure would nowhere near be the same as what it is now.
Good to speak with you. The very best of luck. Sam Walker's got his own restaurants. He's also the strategic lead of the Birmingham Hospitality Group, which represents some 250 members or so. It's a really, really tough time, but aren't we just beginning to think about learning to live with COVID? And I appreciate that those of you who are in a vulnerable position. I was listening to a caller yesterday with cystic fibrosis. The answer is, for people like that, I don't know what the answer is. So, I say that with as much sensitivity as I can, as the rest of us get on with it. What are people to do? As I say, hopefully Omicron is a short, sharp hit, and we all, across all aspects of society, survive it. That's 345606973 is the number to call. 716 is the time. I'll take you through the front pages in just a second. And coming up, Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle. He supported MPs bringing babies into the chamber after the Labour MP Stella Creasy was originally blocked. She got a letter, an email saying, it's against the rules. Anyway, we can't all bring our children into, not that we want to, drag my 29-year-old in. Now sit down there and be good. But Should Stoke Crazy have a baby in the chamber? Wouldn't that affect the conduct of business? Well, not if the baby's sleeping, but what if it's not? She said my baby's well behaved. Well, not always. News headlines, Lottie Morning.
It's emerged policing insulate Britain's protests cost taxpayers at least £4.3 billion. Hundreds of thousands more people in England will receive a text message urging them to get a COVID booster vaccine this week. A report has found the social care system isn't fit for purpose and is handing some children over to criminal gangs. LBC weather, wet and windy for most, clearing eastwards this afternoon, a high of 17 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Anne-Marie Walsh. There are delays on the London-bound M4 this morning. It's down to just one lane between junctions heading for Wokingham and 89 at Maidenhead after a lorry overturned. Recovery work is still taking place there. On the M25 clockwise, the lane is closed on the exit slip road. That's at junction 25 for Enfield, as the road surface is in poor condition following some flooding earlier on. The Woolwich Ferry remains suspended for emergency repairs, and on the tube, severe delays on the Bakerloo line between Queen's Park and Elephant and Castle on the north.
In 2 miles, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
London Overground between Romford and Upminster and between Highbury, Islington and Stratford.
This is LBC.
Hi there, small business owner. Your tiny QuickBooks team here.
Self-assessment season is upon us. We make it so quick and easy, you might even enjoy it.
But seriously, let's get it all sorted before the 31st of January.
For available tax products, visit quickbooks.co.uk.
This is LBC.
Wiping away all the gunk and the crime galore.
Bottoms, two faces, bathtubs, and so much more.
What to do next with the wipes? Don't ignore the bin, 'cause it's just over there. Oh dear, Stone Cat, our lovely street.
If it's not low, it's not for the lavatory.
Bag it and bin it, and it will be history from the hour of our hand.
Bin it, don't block it. Thank you from Thames Water. Hi there. Right now, I'm in the left speaker. I've switched to the right speaker. Switching to electric vehicles will be this simple too. Now in both speakers. Let life flow from the people you know, with over 8,000 BP pulse charging points where and when you need them, including ultra-fast charging to get you back on the open road as soon as possible. Find out more about EV charging from BP in the right speaker. Search BP Pulse.
There's a revolution happening. A different way to sell your home. All across the country, people are discovering how it feels when you sell your home for free. Really, truly free. With over £1 billion of property sold in the last year, we're rated excellent from over 15,000 reviews on Trustpilot. Find out how you can sell your home for free at strike.co.uk. Strike. Feel free. The verification is at strike.co.uk/more. This festive season.
In a 1/4 mile, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
Coverings for those who aren't exempt, and trains that are as clean as a whistle. You can rest easy when you travel with us. All you have to do is sit back and relax as you glide past all that holiday traffic. Find out more at
Exit at junction 3.
UK. Avanti West Coast. Travel with confidence.
Andrew Castle on LBC. Call 0345.
In a 1/4 mile, at Cranford Parkway interchange, take the 4th exit onto the Parkway, A312.
This is LBC 20/7. Yes, we're talking about the record number of cases of COVID recently.
Exit the roundabout onto the parkway. Continue on the parkway for 1 mile.
Casual hits 12.1 trillion. Justin Oacutt Stewart with me in a few minutes' time. Blockbuster year for markets. Amazing, isn't it? So that's on the front page of the FT. The Guardian this morning. UK households warned of a year of the squeeze. Cost of living soars. Obviously, energy prices are driving that, but prices everywhere, including at the petrol pumps, certainly hitting. Have you noticed the cost of shopping going up? Hospital cases climbing. A serious illness from Omicron remains lower. That's the Eye this morning. The Sun newspaper, rave hearts. We've got Mel Gibson on the front in his William Wallace role. Scots to invade England on New Year's Eve. Boozers fury at Nicola rules. 100,000 ready to cross the borders. And they call it rave hearts. Daily Express this morning, dare we hope worst of COVID is history, so that's a sort of positive take on it as well. The Times newspaper this morning cuts self-isolation to save the NHS. Johnson is urged. Fears of thousands of children stuck in illegal schools is a top-line story on the front page of that newspaper. And the Telegraph, test and trace, as I was telling people to isolate incorrectly. And a picture of Joe Root saying he's staying put despite the Ashes catastrophe. 2 more tests to go, 3-0 to Australia, and I feel for all of the players in that team at the moment. Preparation rubbish, and they play badly. It happens. 7:24 is the time. Those are your newspapers this Wednesday morning, the 29th of December. What is the reality?
In a quarter of a mile at Wagoners Roundabout, take the second exit and stay on the parkway, A312.
But the grim reality for many years, if you've had somebody in long-term care in hospital who is really suffering with health, is that your continuity of care can often be appalling. The people that you deal with are not always angels. Let me be very frank. It can be very, very difficult. You come across just great people, full of care and compassion. You come across other people who work in the hospital, in the NHS, yes, who are less than brilliant. Some of them will feel stifled by the system. Some are demoralized. Some are unhappy, and some are not very good. You know, that is the grim reality. Now, we got a text in earlier on, and I'm very happy to be speaking now with the person who sent that text, who's got a story to tell. Anna in Wilmslow in Cheshire. Anna,
exit the roundabout onto the parkway.
Thank you for calling.
Continue on A312 for 1.5 miles.
And that you're prepared to tell us what your reality is. Yeah, please go ahead and start in whichever way you feel we should hear this.
Thank you. So, my fiance was admitted into hospital in North Manchester at the end of November with a non-COVID related illness. Unfortunately, a few days later, at the beginning of December, he subsequently suffered a cardiac arrest and was admitted to ICU, has been intubated, sedated ever since, and is not reacting appropriately to attempts to bring him round. He's had several scans, and what he actually really needs, and it's a critical moment, is he needs an MRI scan, but the hospital he's in can't accommodate the intubation, so he needs a team of airways nurses to accompany him to a different hospital where they can do a scan whilst he's on the ventilator.
So he's non-COVID.
Non-COVID.
So he's non-COVID. Went in for non-COVID. Had a heart attack in November in North Manchester. And he's now waiting for something very, very important to happen, the MRI scan. Why isn't it happening?
Because the staff levels are just not there. We've been waiting for over a fortnight for this MRI scan to take place, and just as they think all the ducks are in a row, somebody rings in to say that they can't come in because they're waiting for the PCR test results. There's just not enough staff to be able to accommodate this procedure for him, which we desperately need. It's just heartbreaking.
You need to see what's going on in there so that you can adjust his care so that everybody can get on and do their job. And he can't have the MRI because either the radiologist or the person who interprets the...
Yeah, it's the ICU nurses, basically. There's a bed there for him. The other staff, the neurologists are around, but it's the ICU nurses that are required to care for him whilst he's in their ICU, awaiting the results, and also the specialist team that need to transport him from one hospital to the other. They're just the staffing availability is just not there.
Are you, clearly you're in every day, and
well, I'm not allowed. I can see him once a week for an hour.
Once a week for an hour?
Yeah.
Even though you're testing negative?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. That's mad.
It's the rules, unfortunately. The nurses themselves are no happier about it.
No, I understand that. But this is exactly where so many people have found themselves with loved ones, isn't it? Well, that must be unbelievably. God. So you're on the phone the whole time, or just
waiting.
Just waiting.
Jumping when the phone rings. I don't go anywhere without my phone. I even take it to the bathroom.
And you don't want to be bullying the staff, do you? But you've got to be quite forthright with them and say why not, and come on, and sort of cajole them, presumably. My
In a quarter of a mile, turn right onto Roslyn Avenue.